I was hiding behind a massive oak tree, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst right through my chest, waiting to catch my husband in the arms of another woman. I was certain I was about to witness an affair. After all, the signs were everywhere. The constant disappearances, the poorly told lies, the way he avoided my eyes when he talked about going fishing with Raymond. But when I finally saw what he was actually doing on that riverbank, I realized I had been completely wrong. What he was hiding was infinitely worse than any affair. My name is Janet Holloway. I'm 65 years old. I spent the last 43 years married to a man I thought I knew inside and out. We lived in a modest single-story house in Willow Bend, Arkansas, a quiet town where everybody waves at each other on Main Street and nobody locks their doors at night. I worked as a substitute teacher at the local elementary school, and he, Walter Holloway, was a retired electrician. Or at least that's what I believed. We had 2 grown children. Megan, who was 42 at the time and lived all the way in Tulsa with her own family, barely visiting twice a year, and Evan, 38, a long-haul trucker who showed up every couple of months with stories from the road and a duffel bag full of dirty laundry. They were good kids, busy kids, living their own lives. And me? I was just a tired woman trying to hold together a home while feeling like something was slowly crumbling from the inside, like a foundation cracking beneath the surface. Everything started changing about 6 months before that day at the river. Walter began going out every weekend to fish. He'd always enjoyed the water, so at first I didn't think much of it. But the frequency increased. Every Saturday, every Sunday, sometimes even on Thursday nights, saying he was meeting Raymond Cole and some buddies down by the Arkansas River. But he came back different. His hands were too rough. His fingernails always stained with black grease. And there was that tan, too dark, burned by midday sun, not the kind you get sitting under a fishing canopy in the shade. He'd come home exhausted, drenched in sweat, complaining about back pain. Said he'd been carrying heavy equipment. I started paying attention to the details. The tackle box he took always came back dry, too clean. No fish smell, no old bait stuck to the bottom. And stranger still, he never brought fish home. Not a single catfish. Not one story about almost caught a big one. Nothing. When I asked him how his day went, he always gave the same answer. Pretty quiet. The fish weren't biting today, but it was good to relax with Raymond. And he'd look away. Then the phone calls started. Always on that old cell phone he kept in the truck. I'd hear it ring in the middle of the night, watch him jump up fast, step outside to the porch to answer. He'd come back different, tense, with that look of someone living a parallel life. Sometimes he'd leave before sunrise, saying Raymond had called, that they needed to get an early start. I pretended to believe him, but inside, it was starting to hurt. Because a woman knows, a woman always knows when something's wrong, and my body had been screaming for weeks. There's someone else. There's a secret. There's a lie. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that I found the first receipt, crumpled at the bottom of his backpack, gas station. But the station was in Pine Bluff, over 60 miles away, in the opposite direction from where he claimed to fish. Then came another receipt, a diner in Stuttgart, another town, another direction entirely. I started piecing it together. His hands weren't just rough from fishing rods. These were calluses from someone handling heavy machinery. And those dark stains under his nails weren't fish guts. It was grease, oil, machine residue. I talked to Darlene Brooks, my neighbor, asked if she'd noticed anything strange about Walter lately. She got uncomfortable, said she didn't want to get involved in married people's business. But I saw it in her face. She knew something. That's when it really hit me. He wasn't cheating on me with a woman. He was cheating on me with Raymond. Not in a romantic way, you understand, but in that way 2 men share a secret, a bond, a plan, something that connected them in a way I couldn't reach anymore. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The way he talked about Raymond, the urgency when answering his calls, the smile, the excessive familiarity. I decided I was going to find out the truth, by myself. I borrowed Darlene's old Buick on Friday morning, lied to everyone that I was going to visit my cousin in Little Rock, and followed my husband. I left the house before dawn, packed a thermos of coffee, a flashlight, and my late father's binoculars. I got in that borrowed car and followed Walter's beat-up Silverado from a distance. He took Highway 165 heading south, but after about 40 minutes, he turned off. Took a dirt road, narrow, dusty, surrounded by nothing but farmland and dead trees. No signs, no markers. A road only someone who knows would take. I was afraid to get too close and have him spot me in his rear view. So I slowed down, let the distance grow, followed the tire tracks in the red dirt. The road got more and more isolated. No houses, no people. Just woods, heat, and silence. After almost 2 hours of driving, I saw smoke rising in the distance. And noise. A mechanical noise, constant, like generators running full power. I parked the car hidden behind some trees, got out, locked the doors quietly, and walked. The sun was already high, burning my skin. Sweat ran down my back. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but I needed to know. I walked for about 15 minutes, following the noise and the smoke. That's when I saw it. The truth is, I was never the suspicious type, never jealous, controlling, one of those women who checks her husband's phone or creates drama over nothing. I always believed marriage was built on trust, and for 43 years, I trusted Walter with my eyes closed. But there's a difference between trust and blindness. And I had been blind for a long time. We met when I was 22 years old. Fresh out of college with a teaching degree and dreams of changing the world one classroom at a time. Walter was 25, working as an apprentice electrician, all calloused hands and easy smiles. He wasn't flashy, wasn't the type to make grand gestures, but he was steady, reliable, safe. We got married 6 months after our first date, had Megan 2 years later. Evan came along 4 years after that, and life just continued. In that rhythm, you think is happiness, but is really just routine wearing a comfortable mask. I never asked for much, never demanded. I just wanted peace. A man who came home every night, who sat down to dinner with us, who didn't break anything inside me. And for a very long time, that's exactly what I had. But in recent months, something had died between us. He didn't touch me anymore, didn't laugh at my jokes, didn't share his problems with me. He lived inside his own head, distant, unreachable. And I started feeling that dull ache every woman knows, the pain of being invisible in your own home. I tried talking several times, asked if everything was okay, if he wanted to talk about something, but he always deflected. "Everything's fine, Janet, just tired." And he'd go back to his phone, or pretend to sleep. So I started observing, and the more I observed, the more I saw. The trips with Raymond had a pattern. Always weekends, always before dawn, always with that strange urgency. And he always came back different, more distant, more closed off, like he'd left a part of himself there, in that secret place he shared with his friend. I started feeling jealous, not the kind I knew, not jealousy over a woman. It was jealousy of connection, of intimacy, of shared secrets, because Raymond knew things I didn't know, and that hurt more than any affair. I'd known Raymond Cole since forever. He and Walter had been friends since their 20s. Single man, kind of odd, lived alone in a rundown house near the river, worked odd jobs, boat repairs, sometimes guided fishing tours for tourists. I never particularly liked him. Always thought he had a sneaky quality about him. But Walter liked him, said Raymond was good people, a real friend. But now, that friendship had turned into something else, something bigger, something that excluded me completely. It was on a Thursday afternoon when I came home early from substituting at the school that I finally decided to act. Walter was in the backyard on the phone, speaking low, almost whispering. I stood in the kitchen listening. "No, I can't tell her, Raymond. She wouldn't understand." Pause. "I know it's risky, but we're almost there. Few more months and we can retire from this life." My heart froze. Retire? From what? He was already retired from electrical work. His pension was modest but steady. I kept listening. Those folks from up top are pressuring us, but stay calm. We'll handle it. And if she finds out, I'll deal with it. He took a deep breath. I know it's dangerous, but it's worth it. Dangerous? I felt my legs tremble. Went back to the bedroom before he could see me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lay there beside him, listening to his heavy breathing, trying to understand, trying to put the puzzle together. The pieces didn't fit an affair. It didn't make sense. There were no flowers, no lies about extra work, no excuses about running to the store, be right back. This was different. This was structured, planned, something involving money, risk, and other people. And Raymond was at the center of it. On Friday morning, I made my decision. Walter left saying he was spending the weekend fishing the Arkansas, maybe 3 days. Took a big duffel bag, a tent, a cooler. Kissed my forehead absently and left. I waited for him to disappear around the corner, grabbed my purse, put on comfortable clothes, laced up old sneakers, and walked next door. Darlene Brooks was watering her tomato plants when I knocked on her chain-link fence. "Morning, Janet," she said, looking up with that pleasant smile she always wore. "Everything all right?" "Darlene, I need a favor," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Can I borrow your car for the day? Mine's making a weird noise and I need to run to Little Rock." She hesitated for just a second, then nodded. "Sure, honey. Keys are on the kitchen counter. Just bring it back with gas." I thanked her, grabbed the keys to her old Buick LeSabre, and left. I didn't go to Little Rock. I followed Walter. I kept distance, always 3 or 4 cars behind when we were on the highway. When he turned onto that unmarked dirt road, I had to hang back even more. The dust from his truck would have given me away if I got too close. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My mouth was dry. Part of me wanted to turn around, go home, pretend I'd never seen anything. But I couldn't, because I'd spent too many years pretending, too many years accepting half-truths and shallow explanations, too many years being the good wife who didn't ask questions. Not anymore. The road seemed endless. Red dirt, potholes, broken branches scraping the sides of the car, no other vehicles, no signs of life. Just me, following tire tracks, driving towards something I couldn't name but knew would change everything. After what felt like hours, I started hearing it. That mechanical hum, low at first, then louder, and voices, men's voices carrying across the empty land. I slowed down. My heart hammered against my ribs. Up ahead, I saw where Walter's truck had stopped, parked near a cluster of other vehicles. Pickups, a van, a black SUV with tinted windows that looked completely out of place in this rural setting. I pulled off the road, drove the Buick behind a thick stand of pine trees, and cut the engine. For a long moment, I just sat there, breathing, sweating, terrified. Then I opened the door. The air outside was thick and hot, smelled like diesel and river mud. I could hear that mechanical sound clearly now, accompanied by the low rumble of generators. I started walking. Slowly, carefully, staying close to the tree line. My father's binoculars hung around my neck, bumping against my chest with each step. I'd brought them thinking I might need to see from a distance. I didn't know how right I was. As I got closer, the sounds got louder, men shouting instructions, metal clanging, the roar of machinery. And then I reached the edge of the clearing, and I saw. What I saw made my blood run cold. This wasn't fishing. This wasn't recreation. This wasn't anything innocent. This was an operation. Industrial. Organized. Illegal. Massive pumps and hoses ran from the river's edge up onto the bank. Generators the size of cars powered floodlights even in broad daylight. Men in work gloves and heavy boots hauled equipment, shoveled mud, operated machines I didn't recognize. And there, right in the middle of it all, was Walter, my husband, not holding a fishing rod, not relaxing with a beer, not doing anything resembling what he'd told me he was doing. He was working, hard, operating some kind of control panel connected to one of the big pumps. His shirt was soaked through with sweat. His face was concentrated, focused, and standing beside him, pointing at something and giving directions, was Raymond Cole. But they weren't alone. There were at least a dozen other men, and as I watched, frozen behind that tree, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A man in clean clothes, dress shirt, slacks, polished shoes, walked up from where a boat was tied at the riverbank. He carried a leather briefcase, walked straight to Raymond, shook his hand, opened the briefcase. Even from where I stood, I could see the stacks of cash inside. Raymond took an envelope from his pocket, handed it over. The man in clean clothes counted it quickly, nodded, closed the briefcase, and walked back to the boat. This wasn't just illegal. This was organized crime, and my husband was right in the middle of it. I stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe, watching the man I'd shared a bed with for 43 years operate machinery for criminals. And in that moment, I understood. I didn't know my husband at all. The river was right there in front of me, but it wasn't the river I'd imagined. There were no fishing rods leaning against trees, no coolers full of beer and sandwiches, no men lounging in folding chairs, swapping stories and waiting for a bite. What was there was machinery, a lot of machinery. Industrial pumps the size of compact cars, roaring and churning, sucking water and sediment from the riverbed with violent force. Generators rumbling like angry beasts, thick hoses snaking across the muddy ground. Conveyor belts, sluice boxes, equipment I'd only ever seen in documentaries about mining operations, and men. At least 15 men, maybe more, covered head to toe in mud and river water, working in coordinated shifts like a well-oiled assembly line. And there, right in the center of it all, was Walter. He wore a soaked t-shirt that clung to his body, jeans muddied to the knees, and thick rubber gloves that went up to his elbows. He was crouched beside one of the machines, adjusting something I couldn't identify. Next to him stood Raymond Cole, and 3 other men I'd never seen before. My heart nearly stopped. This wasn't fishing. This was an operation. I stood frozen, hidden behind that massive oak tree, trying to understand what I was seeing, trying to process, trying to breathe. The men worked quickly, with practiced movements, like people who'd been doing this for a long time. They shouted to each other over the roar of the machines, hauled buckets, ran material through screened boxes, and every so often, someone would hold up something small and shiny to the sunlight. That's when I realized. Gold. They were mining for gold. My husband was involved in illegal gold mining in the middle of nowhere. I felt my legs weaken, had to brace myself against the tree trunk to keep from falling. My head spun, my stomach turned. Everything I'd constructed in my mind over the past months collapsed at once. He wasn't having an affair. He was committing a crime. And suddenly, everything made sense. The extra money that had started appearing a few months ago. His excuses about picking up side jobs. The new flat-screen TV he'd bought without consulting me. The truck repairs he'd paid for in cash without complaining about the price. The way he'd covered Megan's emergency dental work without even blinking. He was bringing dirty money into our home. And I, like an idiot, had thought it was honest hard work. I stood there, hidden, watching my husband labor like a convict under that scorching sun. He didn't look uncomfortable, didn't look scared. He looked accustomed, like this was his real life, and our house, me and the kids, were just the fake part. Suddenly, he stopped, wiped sweat from his forehead with his arm, looked over at Raymond, and said something I couldn't hear. They both laughed. Laughed, like they were doing something fun, something normal. I felt rage rising in my throat, a rage I'd never felt before. It wasn't just about the lie, it was about the ease, the casualness, the way he could live 2 lives without showing any weight. I thought about stepping out from behind the tree, about shouting, about demanding, "What the hell are you doing, Walter?" But something held me back. An instinct. A voice deep inside saying, "Don't reveal yourself now. Not yet." So I kept watching. That's when I saw more people arriving. A black pickup truck, newer model, drove slowly up the dirt road, parked near the machines. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a clean button-down shirt, khaki pants, leather boots that had never seen mud. He wasn't dirty, wasn't sweating. He was pristine, put together, like someone who'd just stepped out of an office. Raymond walked over to him. They shook hands. The clean man pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it over. Raymond opened it, counted the cash quickly, and nodded to Walter. My husband approached, shook the clean man's hand. They talked briefly. Then the man got back in his truck and drove away, just as quickly and quietly as he'd arrived. This wasn't some operation run by two friends trying to make extra money. This was structured, had hierarchy, had payment schedules, had outside people giving orders. I started trembling, not from fear, from shock, from discovery, from betrayal. Because the man I knew, the Walter who fixed electrical outlets, who complained about his bad back, who watched the evening news on the couch every night, didn't exist. He was an invention, a mask. The real Walter was here, at this illegal riverside, operating machinery, taking dirty money, laughing with Raymond like there were no consequences. I stayed there for over 2 hours, motionless, observing, recording every detail in my memory. The faces, the machines, the workflow, everything. I watched when they stopped to eat, sandwiches and cold soda pulled from a cooler, sitting on the muddy bank, talking casually like workers on a lunch break. I watched when they started back up, when they restarted the machines, when they continued that cycle like it was the most natural thing in the world, and it was there, sitting in the hot dirt, hidden behind that tree, that I understood something. I didn't know my husband. Not really. I'd lived 43 years next to a stranger. When the sun started dropping and they showed signs of wrapping up for the day, I stood up, slowly, silently, walked back to the car, got in, closed the door, and sat there, trembling, trying to decide what to do. I could leave, pretend I hadn't seen anything, go home, continue being the same old Janet, or I could confront him. But confront him how? When? In front of whom? What if he denied it? What if he convinced me I'd misunderstood? What if he made me feel crazy, paranoid, hysterical? I sat there until it got dark, until I saw Walter's Silverado pass on the dirt road, kicking up dust, heading back toward town. I waited another 15 minutes. Then I started the car. I drove back to Willow Bend in the dark, on autopilot, my mind racing at 1,000 miles an hour. I got home close to midnight. The house was silent, empty. I went to bed, didn't change clothes, didn't brush my teeth, just lay down, and stared at the ceiling, my heart still pounding in my chest. Walter didn't get home until Sunday evening, like always. Walked through the door, dropped his duffel bag on the floor, said a quick hello, showered, and sat down for dinner. I put the plate in front of him. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. He ate, complimented the food, said it had been a long weekend, tiring but good. And me? I just smiled, because now I knew. But what I didn't know yet was what came next. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake thinking. I had 3 choices. First, confront him directly, demand the truth, risk him lying or getting angry. Second, go to the police, report what I saw, risk putting him in jail, risk destroying our family. Third, do nothing, pretend I never saw anything, live the rest of my life in a lie. None of the options were good, but one of them was the only one I could live with. As the sun came up Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I was going to investigate more. Because if I was going to destroy my marriage, destroy my life as I knew it, I needed to be absolutely certain. I needed proof. And I needed to know exactly who else was involved. So I started digging. I went through his truck when he was at the hardware store, found maps with marked locations, more receipts, a business card for someone named C. Winford, Industrial Supplies. I searched online. Charles Winford, local businessman, owner of Winford Lumber and Metals, respected community member, donor to the church, criminal. I kept digging, checked his phone while he was in the shower, found encrypted messages. Numbers I didn't recognize, but one name kept appearing, EP, EP. Who was EP? It took me 3 days to figure it out. Elliot Parks, Pastor Elliot Parks from First Light Baptist Church, the biggest church in Willow Bend. The man who preached every Sunday about honesty, integrity, walking in the light. He was involved, a pastor. And that's when I realized just how deep this went. This wasn't just Walter and Raymond doing something stupid. This was organized crime, protected by powerful people. People who had money, influence, connections, people who wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened them. And I had just become a threat. In the days that followed, I became a different person. On the outside, I remained the same old Janet. Woke up early, made coffee, substituted at the elementary school when they called, came home, cooked dinner, watched Jeopardy, went to bed. The routine continued unchanged. But inside, I was completely different. I had a secret now, and that secret changed everything. I started observing Walter with new eyes. Every gesture carried new weight. Every word hid a lie. When he picked up his phone, I wondered who he was talking to. When he left to run to the hardware store, I wondered if it was true. When he smiled at our neighbor's dog and said, "Good boy," I thought, "Who are you really?" I started having insomnia, lay awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I'd seen at that river. The machines, the men, the money in the envelope, the way he laughed with Raymond, the way he operated everything with such ease. And the worst part was that he had no idea I knew. He continued living like always. Calm, confident, thinking he'd fooled me perfectly. And I let him. Because I still didn't know what to do with that information. Part of me wanted to scream, wanted to throw it all in his face, wanted to ask, "Who are you really, Walter?" But another part, the more rational part, told me to wait, to think, to plan. Because confronting without a plan was dangerous, and I'd already figured out this wasn't a game. This involved powerful people, big money, serious crime. I started investigating on my own, quietly, without raising suspicion. I went through his duffel bag when he was in the shower, found crumpled receipts, notes with strange numbers, an old notebook with calculations. I photographed everything with my cell phone, saved the evidence. I searched his truck while he slept, found marked-up maps, locations I'd never heard of, more photographs. I opened his dresser drawer, found cash. A lot of cash. 50s and hundreds rolled up in a plastic bag, hidden under his socks. I counted it. $3,200. In bills, hidden like a criminal. I felt a knot in my throat. That money wasn't his. That money was dirty, illegal, dangerous. And he'd brought it into our home, near our lives. That's when the anger started giving way to fear. Because if he was involved in this, if powerful people were paying him to operate those machines, then he was at risk. And consequently, I was too. I thought about going to the police. But what if he got arrested? What if he hated me forever for turning him in? What if he said I knew too, that I was an accomplice? What about Megan and Evan? How would they handle knowing their father was a criminal? I thought about talking to someone. To Linda Harper, my best friend of 30 years. She worked at the town hall as a receptionist. She knew everybody. But what if she told someone? What if word got back to the wrong people? I thought about confronting him directly, at home, at night, after we'd gone to bed. But what if he reacted badly? What if he became violent? Walter had never raised a hand to me, but I'd also never threatened his operation before. I was trapped in this limbo for almost 2 weeks, living a lie, pretending everything was fine, smiling, cooking, talking about nothing. But inside, I was falling apart. I stopped eating properly, lost 7 pounds in 12 days. My neighbor Darlene noticed, asked if I was feeling all right. I lied, said it was just stress from work. Even my reflection in the mirror looked different. Older, tired, haunted. It was on a Thursday night that everything started getting worse. Walter came home earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen, frying pork chops for dinner, He walked through the front door, dropped his bag on the floor with force, and went straight to the bedroom without saying a word. I found that strange. Dried my hands on the dish towel and followed him. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, breathing hard. "What happened?" I asked, trying to sound natural. He took a long time to answer. When he finally looked at me, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. "Nothing," he said, but his voice came out shaky. "Just work stuff." "Work stuff?" I repeated, crossing my arms. "What work, Walter?" He looked at me for a second too long, like he was evaluating whether he could trust me, like he was measuring how far his lie still worked. "Problem with a client," he said, looking away. "Nothing major." But I knew it was a lie, because no refrigerator repair client leaves a man looking that terrified. That night he didn't eat dinner, stayed locked in the bedroom, on his phone, talking low. I pressed my ear to the door and heard fragments of the conversation. "I know it's tight. I know, but we can't stop now. They'll come after us. I know it's dangerous." My heart raced. Who were they? What would be collected? Dangerous how? When he finally came out of the bedroom, it was almost midnight. He went straight to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, drank it in one gulp, and stood there, staring at the wall. I walked in slowly. "Walter, what's going on?" He turned to me. And for the first time in 43 years, I saw real vulnerability on his face. "Janet," he started, but stopped. Took a deep breath, shook his head. "Never mind. It's nothing you need to worry about." "Nothing I need to worry about?" I repeated, feeling anger rising. "You think I'm stupid, Walter?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" I almost let it all out right there. Almost shouted, "I know about the mining. I know about the gold. I saw everything." But something held me back. Maybe survival instinct, maybe fear of what would come next. So I just said, "I know you're hiding something, and I know it's not fishing." He went pale. His eyes widened. For a second, I thought he was going to confess, that he was going to break down, that he was going to tell me everything. But he didn't. He hardened, set his jaw, and said, in a voice cold enough that I didn't recognize, "You don't know anything, Janet, and it's better if it stays that way." He turned his back and walked out. I stood there, trembling, tears streaming down my face. It was in that moment I became absolutely certain of something. I wasn't safe anymore. If he was threatening me, if he was scared, if he was involved with dangerous people, then I needed to protect myself. And to protect myself, I needed to know the complete truth. The next morning, Friday, Walter left early. Said he was spending the weekend away again. Fishing. The same excuse as always, but this time I wasn't just going to follow him. This time I was going to confront him. I called Linda Harper, my best friend, the one person I thought I could trust. "Linda, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." We met at Betty's Diner on Main Street, a public place, neutral ground. I sat across from her in the red vinyl booth, hands wrapped around a coffee cup I wasn't drinking, and told her everything. The river, the machines, the gold, the money, Charles Winford, Pastor Parks, all of it. She listened in silence. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, concern. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice full of sympathy. That's serious. That's really serious." "I know," I said, feeling tears threatening again. "I don't know what to do, Linda. I'm scared." "You should go to the police," she said firmly. "Right away. Today." "But what about Walter? What about my kids? What if—" "Janet," she interrupted, squeezing my hand harder. "Listen to me. If what you're saying is true, these people are dangerous. You could be in real danger. You need to report this." I nodded, wiping my eyes. You're right. I needed to tell someone first. I needed to know I wasn't crazy." "You're not crazy," she assured me. You're brave, and you're doing the right thing. She asked me detailed questions. Where exactly was the site? What day had I seen them? What time? How many men? What did Charles Winford look like? I answered everything, told her I was planning to go to the county sheriff's office on Monday morning. She nodded, said that was smart, said to be careful over the weekend, said to call her if I needed anything. We hugged in the parking lot. She drove away in her Honda. And I felt, for the first time in weeks, like I wasn't alone, like someone was on my side. I had no idea I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. That weekend felt like the longest of my entire life. Walter left Friday morning, same as always. Duffel bag, cooler, fishing rods he never actually used. Kissed my forehead without really looking at me and drove away in that beat-up Silverado. I watched him go from the kitchen window, coffee cup in my hand, heart heavy in my chest. Part of me wanted to stop him, wanted to grab his arm and say, "Don't go." But I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't change anything. He'd made his choice a long time ago. I spent Saturday cleaning the house, scrubbing floors I'd already scrubbed, organizing cabinets that were already organized, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spinning. Sunday morning, I went to church. I hadn't been in months. Walter and I used to go every week when the kids were young, but we drifted away over the years. Too busy, too tired, too many excuses. But that morning, I felt like I needed to be there, needed something bigger than myself, needed to sit in that space and think. First Light Baptist was packed, like always. I slipped into a pew near the back, tried to make myself invisible. And then Pastor Elliot Parks walked up to the pulpit. He was a tall man, early 60s, with silver hair perfectly combed and a smile that seemed to radiate warmth. He wore an expensive suit. His voice was smooth, practiced, comforting. He opened with a prayer, talked about walking in the light, about truth, about integrity. And I sat there, watching him, knowing he was a liar, knowing he was part of the operation that had destroyed my marriage. That had put me in danger, that had turned my husband into a criminal. I wanted to stand up, to point at him, to shout, "You're a fraud," but I didn't. I just sat there, trembling with rage, until the service ended. When I got home, I found something that made my blood run cold. A note, slipped under my front door. Plain white paper, typed letters, no signature. It said, "Stop asking questions, for your own good." I dropped it like it was on fire. My hands shook so badly I could barely pick it up again. Someone knew I was investigating. Someone knew I'd been talking. Linda. It had to be Linda. She was the only person I'd told. But why would she warn them? Why would she betray me? Unless she was involved too. I felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. My best friend, the woman I'd known for 30 years, the woman I'd trusted with everything, she'd sold me out. I grabbed my phone, almost called her, almost demanded to know why. But something stopped me, a survival instinct I didn't even know I had. If she'd warned them, then calling her would only make things worse. I needed to be smart now, smarter than I'd ever been. I went to the bedroom, pulled out the small suitcase from the top of the closet, started packing, just essentials, clothes, toiletries, my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, marriage license, bank papers. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Then I called Evan, my son, the trucker, the one who'd always been protective of me, even as a kid. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Ma, what's up?" "Evan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help, and I need you not to ask questions right now." There was a pause. Then, "What's wrong?" "I can't explain over the phone, but I need to leave Willow Bend, today, and I need somewhere to go for a while." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you in danger?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." "Where's Dad?" He's part of the problem, Evan." Silence. Then, "I'm in Memphis right now. Delivery run. I can be there by tonight. Pack light. Be ready to go." "Thank you." I whispered. Ma, he said, his voice hard now. Did he hurt you? Not physically, but yes, he hurt me. I'll be there by 8. Be ready. He hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase half packed, and let myself cry, just for a minute, just to get it out. Then I pulled myself together and finished packing. It was around 3 in the afternoon when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window. A dark blue sedan, tinted windows. Nobody I recognized. It just sat there, engine running, not moving. My heart started pounding. I moved away from the window, went to the back door, checked the lock, checked all the locks. The car stayed there for 20 minutes, just sitting, watching. Then it drove away slowly. I called Evan back. How soon can you get here? 6 hours, Ma. Maybe 5 if I push it. What's happening? Someone's watching the house. Jesus. Okay, listen to me. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't answer the phone unless it's me. Stay away from windows. I'm coming as fast as I can. Those next 5 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in the living room, away from the windows, suitcase by the door, every sound making me jump. A car passed. My heart raced. A dog barked. I froze. The house settled. I held my breath. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone left me a note? They'd think I was paranoid. And if Linda had connections, if people at the town hall were involved, then going to the local police might just make things worse. At 7:30, headlights swept across the front window. I peeked out carefully. Evan's big rig, parked right in front of the house, engine idling loud and powerful. He got out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing jeans and a faded Peterbilt t-shirt. My boy, all grown up. I opened the door before he could knock. He took one look at my face and his jaw tightened. Let's go. He grabbed my suitcase. I grabbed my purse. We were in the truck and moving within 2 minutes. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house. The house where I'd lived for 43 years, where I'd raised my children, where I'd built a life. And I knew I might never see it again. Where are we going? I asked. Nashville, Evan said, eyes on the road. I got a buddy there. You can stay with him for a while, then we'll figure out next steps. Evan, I'm so sorry. Don't, he cut me off. Just tell me what happened. So I did. As we drove through the dark Arkansas night, I told him everything. The river, the gold, the machines, Walter's involvement, Charles Winford, Pastor Parks, Linda's betrayal, the note. He listened without interrupting. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, He's dead to me. Evan. No, Ma. He put you in danger. His own wife. For money. He's dead to me. I didn't argue, because part of me felt the same way. We drove through the night, stopped once for gas and bad coffee, kept moving. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Just stared out the window at the darkness rushing past, thinking about everything I was leaving behind. We reached Nashville at dawn. The city was just waking up. Evan took me to a small apartment complex on the east side. His friend Danny met us at the door. Former Army, quiet, asked no questions. She can stay as long as she needs, Danny said simply. Evan carried my suitcase inside. The apartment was small, clean, safe. I have to make a run to Atlanta, Evan said. Back in 3 days. You gonna be okay? I nodded. Thank you, baby. He hugged me, hard. We're gonna fix this, Ma. I promise. After he left, I stood in that strange apartment, alone, exhausted, and finally let myself fall apart. I'd lost everything. My home, my husband, my best friend, my entire life. But I was alive. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The first week in Nashville passed in a blur. I barely left Danny's apartment. Barely ate. Barely slept. Just sat on the worn couch, staring at the TV without really seeing it, trying to process everything that had happened. Danny was kind. He worked construction during the day and left me alone. Never asked questions, just made sure there was food in the fridge and told me to lock the door behind him. Evan called every day, checking in, making sure I was okay. He'd told Megan what happened, or at least a version of it. She'd called, crying, saying she couldn't believe Dad would do something like this. Said she'd try to come visit soon, but the kids had school and money was tight. I told her not to worry, that I was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was broken. On day 8, something happened that changed everything. I was sitting in the apartment, drinking instant coffee and watching the morning news, when a story came on that made me drop my cup. The anchor, a young woman with perfect hair and a serious expression, said, "Breaking news out of Willow Bend, Arkansas, where federal agents have raided what they're calling an illegal mining operation on the Arkansas River. The FBI, working in conjunction with the Environmental Protection Agency, arrested 14 individuals early this morning in what sources say is part of a larger investigation into environmental crimes and money laundering in the region." My heart stopped. The screen showed aerial footage. Helicopters circling. Federal agents in windbreakers swarming the site. The machines being shut down. Men in handcuffs being led away. And then they showed mugshots. Raymond Cole, looking scared and old. Charles Winford, wearing a suit even in his mugshot, looking defiant. Deputy Mark Fuller, the deputy sheriff I'd seen that day at the river, looking angry. And then Walter, my husband, in an orange jumpsuit, looking defeated. The anchor continued. Among those arrested was Walter Holloway, 68, a retired electrician. Also arrested was Elliot Parks, pastor of First Light Baptist Church in Willow Bend, who authorities say was a key financial coordinator of the operation. Pastor Parks. They got him too. I sat there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. They'd arrested everyone, the operation was over, and I hadn't even had to report it. The news continued. FBI sources indicate that the investigation had been ongoing for several months, initiated by an anonymous tip. The illegal mining operation is believed to have extracted over $2 million worth of gold from protected riverbed areas over the past 3 years. An anonymous tip. Someone else had reported them, someone who knew what was happening and had gone to the feds. But who? My phone rang. It was Evan. "Ma, you watching the news?" "Yes," I whispered. "They got him. They got all of them." "I know. You okay?" Was I okay? I didn't even know how to answer that question. My husband was in jail. My life as I knew it was over, but the people who'd threatened me were behind bars too. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Stay there," Evan said. "Don't go back yet. Let things settle first." I agreed. Over the next few days, more details emerged. The news reported that the operation had been sophisticated, that they'd used encrypted communications, that money had been laundered through multiple shell companies, that Pastor Parks had used church funds to purchase equipment. They interviewed people from Willow Bend. Everyone was shocked. Nobody had suspected anything. Everyone thought Pastor Parks was such a good man. Everyone thought Walter Holloway was just a quiet, retired electrician. I watched it all from a distance, feeling like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. On day 12, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Mrs. Holloway?" "Yes?" "This is Special Agent Michelle Torres with the FBI. I'm calling regarding your husband's case." My stomach dropped. "Okay," I managed to say. "We'd like to speak with you, if you're willing. We understand you may have information relevant to our investigation." I'm not in Arkansas right now." "We know. We can meet you wherever you are, or conduct the interview by video, if you prefer." How did they know where I was? Or rather, where I wasn't? "How did you find me? Your son listed you as residing temporarily in Tennessee." "We're not trying to frighten you, Mrs. Holloway. We just want to hear your side of things." My side of things. I agreed to meet them. 2 days later, 2 FBI agents came to Danny's apartment. Agent Torres, a Hispanic woman in her 40s with kind eyes, and Agent Davis, a younger black man who took notes while she talked. They sat across from me in the small living room and asked me to tell them everything. So I did. I told them about following Walter, about seeing the operation, about the men involved, about finding the cash in his drawer, about the note under my door, about Linda. Agent Torres listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Mrs. Holloway, you should know something. You weren't the one who reported this operation." "I know," I said. "The news said anonymous tip." "Yes, but I can tell you, and this doesn't leave this room, the tip came from someone inside the operation. Someone who'd been involved for years but wanted out." "Who?" She hesitated, then said, "Raymond Cole." "Raymond, Walter's best friend. He approached us 6 months ago," Agent Torres continued. "Said he wanted to cooperate, that he was tired of living in fear, that the operation had gotten too big, too dangerous, and he wanted protection." 6 months ago. That's when Walter had started acting different. More stressed, more scared. He must have known Raymond was talking. "Raymond wore a wire for us for 3 months," Agent Davis added. "Recorded conversations, documented transactions, built the entire case." "So when I saw them that day," I started. "Raymond already had federal protection lined up," Agent Torres confirmed. "Your husband and the others had no idea. They thought everything was fine." I sat back, processing this. Raymond had betrayed Walter, had destroyed the operation, had sent his best friend to prison. But Raymond had also probably saved my life. "What about Linda Harper?" I asked. Agent Torres and Agent Davis exchanged a glance. "Linda Harper," Torres said carefully, "is also under investigation. We believe she was passing information to the organization. When you told her what you knew, she reported it directly to Charles Winford." My stomach turned. "The note you received," Agent Davis continued, "we traced that. It came from Deputy Fuller. He was acting on orders from Winford. They were trying to scare you into silence." "It worked," I whispered. "You did the right thing by leaving," Agent Torres said firmly. "If you'd stayed, if you'd kept asking questions, it could have ended very badly." She paused, then added, "You should also know, your husband is asking to speak with you." I felt everything inside me go cold. "Why?" "He says he wants to apologize, to explain. He's cooperating with us now, hoping for a reduced sentence. He says he's sorry." Sorry. After everything, he was sorry. "Do you want to see him?" Agent Torres asked gently. I thought about it for a long moment. Thought about 43 years of marriage. About the man I thought I knew. About the stranger he'd become. "No," I said finally. "I don't." "That's your right," she said. "You don't owe him anything." After they left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment. Walter was in jail. Raymond had turned informant. Linda was under investigation. Pastor Parks, Charles Winford, Deputy Fuller, all behind bars. The operation was destroyed, and I was free. But freedom didn't feel how I thought it would. It just felt empty. 3 weeks after the FBI interview, I was still in Nashville, living in Danny's apartment, trying to figure out what came next. I'd started venturing out a little, walking to the corner store, sitting in coffee shops, trying to feel like a normal person again. Evan had been by twice more, brought me groceries, sat with me, didn't push me to talk when I didn't want to. Megan had called several times but hadn't visited. She was angry. Angry at Walter, angry at the situation, angry that I'd left without telling her first. I understood. She needed someone to blame, and I was an easier target than her father behind bars. I was sitting in a small diner on a Tuesday morning, picking at scrambled eggs I had no appetite for, when someone slid into the booth across from me. I looked up. Linda Harper. My blood went ice cold. She looked terrible, thinner than I remembered. Hair not as carefully styled. Dark circles under her eyes. Wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual coordinated outfits. "Don't run," she said quickly, holding up her hands. "Please. I just need 5 minutes." "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice hard. "Evan's friend Danny. I still have connections, people who owe me favors." She looked down at her hands. I'm not here to hurt you, Janet. I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth? I nearly laughed. You sold me out, Linda. You warned them. You put my life in danger. I know. Her voice cracked. I know. And I'm so sorry. But you need to understand, it wasn't what you think. Then what was it? She took a deep breath, looked around the diner to make sure no one was listening, leaned in close. I'm FBI. I stared at her. What? I've been undercover for 2 years, working inside the town hall, gathering evidence, documenting everything. I wasn't warning them about you, Janet. I was protecting you. My mind went blank. I couldn't process what she was saying. You're FBI? She nodded, pulled out a badge from her purse. Special Agent Linda Harper, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I felt like the floor was tilting. But the note, the warning, they knew I was asking questions. That wasn't because of me, Linda said firmly. That was because someone saw you at the river that day. One of Winford's men, a guy named Travis Kelton. He recognized you, ran your plates, figured out you were Walter's wife. He reported it to Winford. But I told you everything. You asked me all those questions. Because I needed to know exactly what you'd seen, so I could keep you safe. She leaned closer. Janet, the day you told me about the river, I went straight to my handler. We moved up the timeline on the raid. We'd been planning to wait another month, gather more evidence, but I told them you were in immediate danger. That's why they moved so fast. I sat there, speechless, trying to reorganize everything I thought I knew. The note under your door, Linda continued, that was Fuller and Winford panicking. They knew someone was asking questions. They didn't know it was you specifically, not at first. They were sending warnings to several people, trying to scare everyone into silence. But you knew it was me. Yes, and I had agents watching your house from that moment on. When you left with Evan, we followed at a distance, made sure you got out safely. I felt tears starting to burn in my eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know you were FBI? Because you would have reacted differently. Your behavior would have changed, and if anyone noticed, if Walter noticed, it could have blown my cover and gotten us both killed. She reached across the table like she wanted to take my hand, but stopped herself. I wanted to tell you so many times. Every time we had coffee, every time you talked about your marriage problems, every time I saw you hurting, but I couldn't. How long have you known about Walter? Since the beginning. Since I went undercover. He was one of the targets. That hurt. Knowing that my best friend had known my husband was a criminal for 2 years and never said anything, but I understood why. Raymond, I said. The FBI told me he was your informant. Linda nodded. He approached us 18 months ago, said he wanted out, that the operation was getting too dangerous, that people were talking about eliminating anyone who became a liability. We offered him protection in exchange for cooperation. He wore a wire, documented everything. He's the reason we could build such a solid case. Is that why Walter was so scared those last few weeks? Probably. Raymond must have said something, or Walter sensed something was off. These operations always start falling apart from the inside before they collapse from the outside. I sat back in the booth, trying to absorb everything. My best friend was FBI. Raymond had been an informant. The raid had happened to protect me. Nothing was what I thought it was. What happens now? I asked. For you, you're free. You're not under investigation. You're not in danger anymore. All the main players are behind bars. Winford, Parks, Fuller, your husband. They're all facing federal charges. Serious time. And you? My assignment in Willow Bend is over. I'm being reassigned, probably back to Little Rock. She paused. I know you probably hate me. I know I lied to you for years, but I want you to know our friendship was real. The conversations, the coffee, the times I listened to you, that was all real. I wasn't pretending about that. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she'd been carrying. How did you do it? I asked quietly. Live a double life like that. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, she admitted. Especially with you. You trusted me. You confided in me. And I had to betray that trust to keep you safe. That's the job, but it never stops hurting. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. Did you know what Walter was going to do? Did you know he was planning to do something to me? Her expression darkened. What are you talking about? The warning, the note. I thought maybe they were planning worse than just scaring me. Linda's face went pale. Janet, there's something I need to tell you. Something the FBI is still investigating. My heart started pounding. The day before the raid, she said slowly, we intercepted a conversation. Between Winford and Fuller, they were discussing options for dealing with you. What kind of options? She looked me straight in the eyes. They were planning to stage an accident, make it look like you'd crashed your car, just like they'd done before. Before? Janet, you weren't the first wife who found out too much. The air left my lungs. What are you saying? 3 years ago, a woman named Carol Simmons, married to one of the equipment operators, started asking questions. She saw something she wasn't supposed to see. Started talking to people. 2 weeks later, she died in a car accident. Single vehicle collision, brake failure. My hands started shaking. The FBI investigated at the time but couldn't prove anything. But now, with everything we've uncovered, we're reopening that case. We believe Fuller sabotaged her car, on Winford's orders. I felt sick. And they were going to do the same to me. Linda nodded. That's why we moved so fast. That's why I pushed for the raid to happen immediately. Because I knew you were next on their list. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I'd been so close to death and hadn't even known it. Did Walter know? I finally managed to ask. Did he know they were planning to kill me? Linda hesitated, then said very quietly, we don't know. He claims he didn't. But Janet, he knew what they were capable of. He knew what had happened to Carol Simmons, and he stayed in the operation anyway. That was the moment everything truly shattered. Because even if Walter hadn't known about their specific plan to kill me, he'd known these were people who killed to protect their secrets, and he'd brought me into that world anyway. He'd chosen money over my life. I'm so sorry, Linda whispered. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders. Thank you, I said, for telling me, for protecting me, for being there, even when I didn't know you were. You're going to be okay, Linda said. You're stronger than you know. She left cash on the table for my breakfast and stood up to leave. Linda, I called after her. She turned. Were we really friends? Under all the lies and the cover story, were we actually friends? She smiled sadly. Yes, we were. We are. And then she was gone. I sat there alone, in that Nashville diner, staring at my cold eggs, understanding finally what I'd survived. Not just an illegal operation, not just betrayal. I'd survived people who'd planned to murder me. And somehow, against all odds, I was still here, still breathing, still alive. After Linda left the diner, I sat there for over an hour, just staring at nothing, trying to process what she'd told me. Carol Simmons, a woman I'd never met, a woman who died 3 years ago because she'd asked the wrong questions, a woman whose fate I'd almost shared. I finally paid my bill and walked back to Danny's apartment in a daze. The streets of Nashville moved around me, cars, people, noise, but I barely registered any of it. When I got inside, I locked the door behind me, sat on the couch, and called Evan. Ma, you okay? You sound weird. Evan, I need to tell you something. I told him everything. About Linda being FBI, about Raymond being an informant, about Carol Simmons, about how close I'd come to being killed. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Evan? I'm here. His voice was different, cold, hard. I'm coming to Nashville, tonight. Don't go anywhere until I get there. Evan, you don't have to. Ma, they were going to kill you. They were going to murder you and make it look like an accident. And he knew. He knew what they were capable of, and he stayed in that operation anyway. We don't know if he knew about the specific plan. It doesn't matter, Evan shouted, and I heard something break in the background. He knew they'd killed before. He knew these were dangerous people, and he chose them over you, over us, over everything. He was right. I knew he was right. I'll be there by midnight, Evan said, calmer now but still tense. We need to talk, face to face. He arrived at 11:30, came in looking exhausted, angry, and scared all at once. We sat up all night talking, about Walter, about the operation, about what came next. You can't go back to Willow Bend, Evan said firmly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I have to eventually. The house, our things, the life I built there. That life is over, Ma. You know it is. I did know, but hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What about the house? I asked. I'll handle it. I'll go back, pack up what you want, put the rest in storage or sell it. You don't have to see that place again if you don't want to. And Walter? Evan's jaw clenched. Evan's jaw. What about him? The FBI said he wants to talk to me, to apologize. You're not seriously considering it. I didn't answer. Ma, look at me. I looked at him. He put you in danger. He lied to you for years. He chose crime over his family. And he would have let them kill you rather than walk away from that operation. Why would you give him the satisfaction of hearing his apology? Because I need closure, I said quietly. Because I need to look him in the eyes and understand how he could do this. How the man I married, the man I loved for 43 years, could become someone I don't even recognize. Evan shook his head. You won't get answers. He'll just make excuses, blame circumstances, tell you he was trying to protect you by keeping you in the dark. It's what guys like him always do. Maybe, but I need to hear it anyway. We argued about it for another hour. But eventually, Evan realized I wasn't going to change my mind. Fine, he said, but I'm coming with you. And if he says one thing that upsets you, we're leaving. Deal? Deal. The meeting was arranged through Agent Torres for the following week. The Federal Detention Center in Little Rock was a cold, sterile building that smelled like industrial cleaner and despair. Evan and I signed in, went through security, and were led to a small visitation room with a table and chairs bolted to the floor. We waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then the door opened, and Walter walked in. He looked smaller somehow, older. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame like he'd lost weight. His hair, always neatly combed, was thin and gray and messy. He had the haunted look of a man who'd lost everything. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Janet, he said, his voice breaking. I didn't respond, just looked at him. This stranger wearing my husband's face. He sat down across from us. A guard stood by the door. Evan stared at him with pure hatred. Walter couldn't meet his son's eyes, just kept looking at me. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice steady. You did hurt me. You lied to me for years. You brought criminals into our lives. You put me in danger. I didn't know they were planning to hurt you, he said quickly. I swear to God, Janet, I didn't know about any plan. When I found out, when Raymond told me they were talking about options, I was going to get you out. I was going to tell you everything and get you somewhere safe. But you didn't, I said. You waited too long. I had to figure it out myself. I had to follow you. I had to discover your secret because you couldn't be honest with me. I was scared, he said, and now he was crying openly. I was in too deep. They told me if I tried to leave, they'd hurt you, hurt the kids. I thought if I just kept working, kept my head down, eventually I could save enough money and we could disappear together, start over somewhere. With dirty money, Evan said coldly, built on crime. Walter finally looked at his son. I know how it sounds. I know what I did was wrong, but I was trying to give you all a better life. We didn't need a better life, Evan shot back. We needed a father who wasn't a criminal. Evan, I said quietly, putting my hand on his arm. He sat back, still glaring. I turned back to Walter. Did you know about Carol Simmons? He went pale. Who told you about her? Answer the question. Did you know they killed her? He looked down at his hands, chained together on the table between us. I suspected, he said finally. After she died, the timing, the way Winford and Fuller acted. I suspected, but I didn't know for sure, and I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe it really was just an accident. But you stayed in the operation anyway. Yes, even knowing they might have killed an innocent woman. Yes. And you were willing to risk the same thing happening to me. No, I wasn't willing. I was trying to figure a way out. You had 43 years to figure a way out, Walter. You had 4 decades to choose me, to choose our family, to choose honesty, and you didn't. He broke down completely then, put his face in his chained hands and sobbed. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, no sadness, just nothing. This man was a stranger. I loved you, I said quietly. For 43 years, I loved you with everything I had. I trusted you. I built a life with you, and you threw it all away for money. It wasn't about the money, he choked out. It was about not feeling like a failure, about being able to provide, about proving I was still worth something. You were worth something, I said. You were worth everything. You were a husband, a father, a good man, and you traded all of that for gold at the bottom of a river. I stood up. Evan stood with me. Wait, Walter said, reaching out with his chained hands. Please, don't go yet. Goodbye, Walter. Janet, please, I love you. I've always loved you. I looked at him one last time. I don't think you know what love means, I said, because if you did, you never could have done this. I turned and walked toward the door. Ma! Walter called out desperately. Please, give me another chance. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. I stopped, turned back. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, I said, and I'm going to spend the rest of mine free. We're done. And I walked out. Evan followed. Behind us, I could hear Walter calling my name, begging, pleading. I didn't look back. In the parking lot, Evan and I stood by his truck for a long moment, neither of us speaking. You okay? He finally asked. Yes, I said, and I meant it. I really am. What now? Now I start over, really start over. New city, new life, new everything. Where? I looked at the sky, clear and blue and endless. I don't know yet, but somewhere far from here, somewhere nobody knows me, somewhere I can just be Janet, not Walter's wife, not a victim, just me. Evan put his arm around my shoulders. I'm proud of you, Ma. You're the strongest person I know. We got in the truck and drove away from that detention center, and I never looked back. 6 months after that meeting in the detention center, I was living in Asheville, North Carolina. It wasn't planned. I'd driven through on my way to nowhere in particular, stopped for coffee at a little cafe downtown, and just stayed. Asheville was different from Willow Bend in every way that mattered. It was bigger, more diverse, full of artists and retirees and young families. Nobody knew me. Nobody asked questions about my past. I was just another woman starting over, and in a city full of people reinventing themselves, that made me invisible in the best possible way. I rented a small studio apartment in an old building near downtown. It had hardwood floors, big windows, and a view of the mountains in the distance. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Really mine. Not shared with anyone, not built on lies. I got a job at a bookstore called Malaprops. It was part-time, mostly shelving books and helping customers, and the pay wasn't great. But the people were kind, and the work was honest, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The owner, a woman named Patricia in her 70s with wild gray hair and bright scarves, took a liking to me immediately. "You've got that look," she said on my first day, studying me over her reading glasses. "What look?" "The look of someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. I recognize it because I wore it myself once." She never asked for details. Just gave me shifts, recommended books, and invited me to the weekly staff dinners at her house. Slowly, carefully, I started building a life. I joined a book club at the local library. 8 women, all over 50, who met every Thursday evening to discuss whatever novel we'd chosen that month. I didn't talk much at first, but I listened. And gradually, I started sharing my opinions, my thoughts, small pieces of myself. One of the women, a retired nurse named Gloria, became something like a friend. She was 72, widowed, with 4 grown children scattered across the country. She had a dry sense of humor and didn't suffer fools. "You running from something or toward something?" she asked me one evening after book club as we walked to our cars. "Both, I think," I answered honestly. "Good. That's the only way to do it right." Evan came to visit twice. He'd been true to his word about handling the house in Willow Bend. He'd packed up everything I wanted, photos, documents, a few pieces of furniture with sentimental value, and put the rest in storage. The house itself was being sold. The proceeds would go partly to legal fees for Walter's defense, partly to me for starting over. I didn't want Walter's money, didn't want anything connected to that life. But Evan convinced me I'd earned it. "You gave 43 years to that marriage, Ma. You're entitled to half of everything, criminal husband or not. Take the money, use it to build something better." So I did. Megan came to visit once. It was awkward at first. She was still angry, at Walter, at me for leaving, at the whole situation. But by the end of the weekend, we'd talked through a lot of it. She cried. I cried. We held each other and mourned the family we used to be. "I keep thinking about when I was little," she said. "When Dad would take me fishing, real fishing, I mean, before all this. And I wonder if that man even existed, or if he was always pretending." "He existed," I told her. "The good parts were real, but so were the bad parts. People are complicated. Your father was both things at once. That's what makes it so hard." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Do you hate him?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate him. I pity him. He had everything, a family who loved him, a life that meant something, and he threw it away because he didn't think it was enough. That's not hate. That's just sad." The trial happened in my 8th month in Asheville. I didn't attend. Evan went and reported back to me. Walter pled guilty to multiple federal charges: illegal mining, money laundering, environmental crimes, conspiracy. In exchange for his cooperation and testimony against the others, his sentence was reduced from 20 years to 12. Charles Winford got 18 years. Pastor Elliot Parks got 15. Deputy Mark Fuller got 20, with additional charges for Carol Simmons's murder. They'd finally gotten enough evidence to charge him. Raymond's testimony, combined with forensic re-examination of Carol's car, proved Fuller had sabotaged her brakes. Raymond himself got 5 years, most of which was suspended due to his cooperation. He'd already served time in protective custody and was released with a new identity through witness protection. Linda, Agent Harper, was given a commendation. She'd moved on to another assignment. I never heard from her again. When Evan told me about the sentences, I felt a strange sense of closure. It was over. Really over. The people who'd threatened me were behind bars. The operation was destroyed. The truth was public. And I was free. Around my 1-year anniversary in Asheville, something unexpected happened. I met someone. His name was Robert. He was 70 years old, a retired high school history teacher, and he came into the bookstore every Saturday morning to buy the New York Times and browse the history section. We started talking one day about a book on the Civil War. He had opinions. So did I. We debated. We laughed. And the next Saturday, he came in again and sought me out specifically. "I've been thinking about what you said," he'd begin. And we'd pick up the conversation right where we'd left off. It went on like that for weeks. Just talking. About books, about history, about life. Then one Saturday, he asked if I'd like to have coffee sometime. I hesitated. The idea of dating, of opening myself up to someone new, terrified me. But I said yes. We met at a cafe downtown, talked for 3 hours. He told me about his late wife, who died of cancer 5 years earlier, about his 3 daughters, about his love of hiking and old movies and terrible puns. I told him I was recently separated, that it had been complicated, that I wasn't sure I was ready for anything serious. "I'm not looking for serious," he said gently. "I'm looking for company, for conversation, for someone who challenges me to think. Everything else can figure itself out in its own time." So we started seeing each other. Slowly, carefully. Coffee once a week became dinner, twice a week became weekend hikes in the mountains. He never pushed, never asked for more than I was willing to give. Just showed up, consistently, with kindness and patience and respect. 3 months into whatever we were, I finally told him the truth. About Walter, about the operation, about everything. I expected him to pull away, to decide I was too complicated, too damaged, too much work. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "That must have taken incredible courage, both to survive it and to tell me about it." "You're not scared off?" "Scared off? Janet, you survived attempted murder, brought down a criminal organization, and rebuilt your entire life from scratch at 65. I'm not scared off. I'm amazed." That night, for the first time in over a year, I felt something I'd thought was gone forever. Hope. Not for a fairy tale, not for perfection. Just for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the second half of my life could be different from the first. Better. Truer. Mine. I kept working at the bookstore, kept going to book club, kept seeing Robert, kept building this small, quiet, honest life. Evan called every week. Megan called every other week. Our relationship was different now. Not what it used to be, but something new. Something built on truth instead of assumptions. On my 66th birthday, Robert took me to dinner at a nice restaurant overlooking the mountains. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small wrapped package. Inside was a leather journal, beautiful, handmade, with blank pages. "For what?" I asked. "For your story," he said. "You've lived something extraordinary, something difficult and painful, but also something powerful. Maybe it's time to write it down, not for anyone else, just for you, so you can look at where you've been and see how far you've come." That night, I sat at my small kitchen table, opened the journal, and wrote the first sentence. I was hiding behind a massive oak tree, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst right through my chest, waiting to catch my husband in the arms of another woman. And I kept writing, not every day, but regularly, putting it all down on paper, the fear, the betrayal, the escape, the rebuilding. And with every page I filled, I felt lighter. Because this was my story, not Walter's, not the FBI's, not the news media's, mine. And I got to decide how it ended. 2 years have passed since that day at the river. 2 years since my entire world collapsed, and I had to rebuild it from nothing. Evan is doing well. He met someone, a woman named Sandra, who works as a dispatcher for his trucking company. They're talking about moving in together. He seems happy. Really happy. And he calls me every Sunday without fail. Megan and I have found our way back to each other. She came to visit last month, brought her kids. We walked around downtown Asheville, ate at local restaurants, and talked about everything and nothing. She told me she's proud of me. That took my breath away. I'm still with Robert. We're not married. Probably never will be. But we're together in the ways that matter. He has his house, I have my apartment, and we meet in the middle. It works for us. I still work at the bookstore. Patricia promoted me to manager last year. Says I have a gift for recommending just the right book to just the right person. I think she's being generous, but I love the work. The book club is still meeting every Thursday. We've read 48 books together now, some brilliant, some terrible, all worth discussing. And I'm still writing in that journal Robert gave me. I've filled 3 of them now. Walter is still in prison. He'll be there for another 10 years at least. He writes me letters sometimes. I don't read them anymore. I give them to Evan, and he decides what to do with them. That's not my burden to carry. Pastor Elliot Parks died in prison 8 months ago. Heart attack. Charles Winford is appealing his sentence. Deputy Fuller will likely die behind bars. I feel nothing about any of it. They made their choices. They're living with the consequences. Raymond Cole is somewhere in witness protection with a new name and a new life. I hope he's found peace. He saved my life, even if he didn't mean to. Linda Harper sent me a Christmas card last year. No return address. Just a note inside that said, "Thinking of you. You were always stronger than you knew." Eli kept the card. Last month, something happened that I didn't expect. A woman came into the bookstore. She was in her early 60s, well-dressed, carrying an expensive handbag. She browsed for a while, then came up to the counter where I was working. "Are you Janet Holloway?" she asked. My blood went cold. Nobody in Asheville knew my full name. I went by Janet Morrison now, my maiden name. "Who's asking?" "My name is Diana Kelton. My husband was Travis Kelton. He worked for Charles Winford." Travis Kelton. The man who'd seen me at the river. The man who'd reported me. The man who'd started the chain of events that almost got me killed. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I want to apologize." Her eyes filled with tears. "I found documents after Travis was arrested. Letters, recordings. I didn't know what he was involved in. I didn't know he'd helped them target you. And when I found out, when I learned what they'd planned to do..." She couldn't finish. I waited. "I went to the FBI," she continued. "Gave them everything I found. It helped strengthen the case against Winford and Fuller. I know it doesn't change what happened. I know it doesn't undo the fear they put you through. But I needed you to know. Not all of us knew. Some of us were just as blind as you were." I looked at this woman, this stranger carrying her own guilt and shame. And I understood. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me, and for going to the FBI. That took courage." "Not as much courage as it took for you to survive," she said quietly. "I read about the case, about everything you went through. You're remarkable." "I'm not remarkable," I said. "I just did what I had to do." "That's what makes you remarkable." She bought a book, a memoir about resilience, and left. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, thinking about everything that had happened. All the lives that had been touched, all the people who'd been affected. Carol Simmons, who didn't survive. Me, who did. Diana Kelton, living with her husband's crimes. Linda Harper, carrying the weight of her undercover work. Raymond Cole, hiding in witness protection. Walter, rotting in prison. And countless others whose stories I'd never know. That night, I had dinner with Robert. Told him about Diana Kelton's visit. "How did that make you feel?" he asked. Honestly, it made me feel grateful. Grateful? Grateful that I survived. Grateful that I got out. Grateful that I found the strength to start over. Because I could have been Carol Simmons. I could have died on some back road, and everyone would have thought it was just an accident. But I didn't. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm happy. He smiled and reached across the table to take my hand. "You are remarkable, you know, whether you admit it or not." Maybe he's right. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just a woman who refused to let criminals and liars and cowards define the rest of her life. Either way, I'm here. I'm 67 years old. I live in a small apartment in a city I'd never been to before 3 years ago. I work in a bookstore. I go to book club. I date a kind man who makes me laugh. It's not the life I planned. It's not the life I imagined when I married Walter 45 years ago. But it's mine. And it's real. And it's enough. Sometimes people ask me if I regret following Walter that day. If I wish I'd stayed blind to what he was doing. The answer is no. Because the truth might have destroyed my marriage, but it saved my life. And given the choice between a comfortable lie and a painful truth, I'll choose the truth every single time. I went to surprise my husband by the river that day expecting to find an affair. What I found instead was a criminal operation that nearly killed me. But I also found something else. I found myself. The real me, the strong me, the me who doesn't need a man to validate her existence. The me who can survive anything. And that woman, she's someone I'm proud to be. So no, I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because I'm alive, I'm free, and I'm finally, truly, myself. Have you ever had to choose between a comfortable lie and a painful truth? Have you ever had to leave everything behind to save yourself? Share your story in the comments. We read every single one.